I was supporting clients, and we were always trying to teach them the principles of how the various diets work, rather than just having to select a singular diet. And understandably, for a lot of people, it's let's say easier to start with to have a certain diet because it's got a strict set of rules and it's sort of a path to follow. But what we tend to find eventually is it doesn't matter what diet people pick, they're going to end up with roadblocks. And if they don't understand some of the principles or the different tools at their disposal, then they don't know how to overcome the roadblocks. They don't have the tools. So can you talk a little bit about, you've written a book all around the different, having sort of the best of all the worlds really, or understanding these tools so that we can apply the right ones to help us lose weight in the long term.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, often people go with just one diet because that's, it's they pick a certain book or a certain article they've read in the media or in social media or whatever, that promotes a particular diet. Usually there's just a book is usually just about one diet, and it tells you all the pros of that, maybe not always telling you what some of the cons are, maybe. But the problem with all single diets is you're usually restricted in eating certain foods to some degree all of the time, and it means you're then constrained to eating a certain number of different types of foods, and you're excluding others. And then people start to get cravings for those things that they would normally include in their normal diet that they have to restrict on these, more specialized diets, whether you're talking about sort of a low carb keto diet, or at the other end of the spectrum, sort of a virtually zero fat diet and getting most of your energy from carb. You've got those two extremes. And at the end of the day, when you look at all the literature out there that's been done on the effectiveness of different diets, they're really, really not very different in terms of their efficacy for weight loss if you match them for the actual amount of calories that are being cut out from the normal diet. So if you have a 500 calorie a day deficit on a keto diet, you'll lose pretty much as much weight and as much body fat in the long run, over sort of several weeks and months, as you would if you had a high carb, low fat diet with the same daily energy deficit. So what I say is don't, generally avoid the extreme diet. You don't need these extremes of macronutrient composition. You don't need to get keto to lose weight, if you see what I mean. Sure. You don't need to cut out all the fat from your diet to lose weight either. And that wouldn't be a healthy thing to do, actually, because we actually do have some essential fats,
soluble vitamins, right?
Yeah, linoleic acid, linolenic acid, etc. Those two are essential. You get your fat soluble vitamins, your A, D, E, and K with intake of fat. So we don't recommend ever cutting down your fat to less than about 10% of your total energy intake. You need a certain minimum there for health. So a sensible thing to do, I think, if there's probably about out there's probably 10 to 15 diets that have plenty of work done on them, including the keto, but also including low fat, and other ones like high protein, high fiber, volumetric diet, that kind of thing. Then you've got intermittent fasting diets, you've got time restricted eating.
Yeah.
There's loads of different ones, probably about 10 which are pretty much equally effective and proven to be effective. So my idea was just, why don't you just switch your diet every week? Now, it might sound complicated. That means I've got to switch all the rules every week. Mm-hmm. But if you actually know what you're doing for each of these diets, and that's why I kind of wrote that book, The Pick and Mix Diet, which is just that, all the meal recipes and amounts that you need are provided, so you can actually achieve your weight loss through just following those sorts of different recipes, and just do it for 1 week, and then you switch back to a different diet. You can do it in pretty much any order you want. Mm-hmm. If you're getting a bit of cravings for carbs because you've started off on your keto diet as the first one, or at least a reduced carb diet, you could go to the other opposite of the spectrum, and go for a high carb, low fat diet, and then maybe go on a high protein diet or go on a flexitarian diet. Some of the established diets we have that people eat around the world, like in Japan and around the original diets that they ate in the poor Mediterranean countries, are very healthy diets. And because you're not used to them, you tend to eat less anyway of them, and you you lose weight that way as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a couple things come to mind there. I mean, you mentioned, yeah, once we match for protein and calories, then it really doesn't matter which diet we're picking. We've got to, get into that caloric deficit. And so it is great to have all these different tools, like you mentioned. And even for people, when you talk about them just going through the process, right? They might go through, as you mentioned, the different diets and the pick and mix, like a low fat diet, knowing that hey, maybe I don't want to follow this forever, but they tend to pick out a few skills within that week or recipes or things that they enjoy that then end up really helping them down the road with, whatever pattern that they do prefer. So I definitely think that's a great process for people to go through.
And if you sort of measure your body mass just, once a week,
Mm-hmm.
At the start and end of that week, you've been on a particular diet, you also get an idea of which ones of those diets will actually work best for you. And also which ones gives you the sort of combination of foods that you enjoy the most. So at the end of the day, if you were to do dieting, you might do that for, say, 10 weeks, in which case you could lose about maybe 10 kilos using this kind of approach, particularly if you couple it with doing some exercise to add in there and, burn some calories as well as taking in less in what you eat. Combining the two is always better, and it's always more effective than either dieting or exercising alone to achieve your weight loss goals.
100%.
Of course, if you burn calories with the exercise, say 500 calories a day by doing an hour of aerobics or something a day, and you cut down your calorie intake by 500 calories, there's your 1,000 calorie a day deficit, which will ensure you lose weight reasonably quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we circle back to on the immune front, again, the last year with COVID, it's sort of been like the red wine and Netflix at night. Everyone's staying up a bit later, especially when lockdown was on. And, we've talked about the sleep impacts on immunity, but what about things like alcohol intake, or in the evening, ultra processed food intake is really ramping up when we look at some of the research on late eating. And so snacking on sugars, drinking alcohol late in the evening, how are these things going to be impacting immune function?
Yeah, not good, and not impacting your overall health either. We know that particularly binge drinking, where you have a real good,
maybe a good night,
but it's good, a good night, but you've done it through drinking a lot of alcohol. That we know has a negative impact on your immune function. And there's a lot of calories, a lot of hidden calories in these drinks, particularly things like red wine, for example.
Mm-hmm.
You get through one bottle of red wine, you've essentially taken on 600 calories of useless calories in terms of what you can use it
doesn't
for.
Store as glycogen, does it?
It just gets converted to fat, most of it. So you can't use it as a fuel for exercise. You can't kind of directly burn it off in itself. And it does impair other things like your cognitive function, the way you
REM sleep and all that.
You behave and everything, so you upset your partner and your neighbours and everybody else along with the impact.
Do you get a few polyphenols?
Well, you get some polyphenols, but in that case, you want your polyphenols, then you
small
drink
doses.
Non-alcoholic
True.
versions of beer or wine. Not quite the same taste, I know, but a lot better for you health-wise.
Yeah. 100%. Well, listen, Prof, I could pick your brain all day here, but I do appreciate your time. Obviously tremendous. You do a football nutrition book coming out. You've had a big impact on us at Canada Basketball in terms of supporting our players and teams with their immune function over some cold, harsh Canadian winters with lots of travel. Where can people stay connected with yourself and then pick up some of the new books and past books as well?
Well, I'm reasonably active on Twitter. So people can find me there. I'm also on LinkedIn, which is sort of a more sort of professional, if you like, sort of social media type of platform. Those are the two ones that I normally use the most. My email address is a secret. Anybody can find that on the Loughborough University website if they want to directly contact me, or they can direct message me on Twitter, for example, or on LinkedIn if you happen to be on that.